up, Red Family? I love covering scary urban legends from around the world. It is my personal favorite series to do on this channel. So since we've covered so many of them, I wanted to narrow it down to another top 10 list of the absolute most frightening ones we've covered so far. So let's get to the nightmare fuel. But before we do, make sure you turn your lights because it's gonna get creepy. So let's get to it. Bathrooms can be a creepy place, especially if it's in the middle of the night or you're all alone. There's something vulnerable about going to a public bathroom, and many Japanese urban legends play off of that uneasy feeling. Said to stalk public bathrooms, Akamanto is an evil spirit that will appear behind the last toilet stall door when you unfortunately choose to relieve yourself. He is said to make his presence known only when you are all alone. In the midst of your business, in his soft voice, he will ask you a question. According to other versions of this urban legend, he will ask you one of 3 questions. Your answer puts your life at risk. If he asks you the first, do you want a red piece of paper or a blue piece of paper? And you answer red, he will barge into your stall and brutally murder you, painting the walls of the stall with your blood. If you say blue, he will slither under the door and strangle you to death with his bare hands, leaving your face with a bluish hue. And don't think you can outsmart him by choosing a different color than the 2 offered, for if you try, a pair of slender, pale hands will reach up from the toilet you are sitting on and drag you in, leaving you cursed after death. If he asks you the second question, would you like a red vest? Your answering him, regardless if it is yes or no, is all he needs. He will kick in the door of your stall, and with a sharp knife, he will rip the skin off of your back, leaving your torso bloody as if you were wearing a red vest. He would then smirk, close the door, and leave you to die all alone in the stall. If he asks you the third question, do you wish for a red or a blue cloak? Your answer determines the color of fabric he will use to strangle you with. But all 3 questions do come with a loophole that could save your life. Keep quiet. If you find yourself all alone in the bathroom, occupying the last stall, and a voice appears out of thin air, stay as quiet as you possibly can until he eventually goes away. But be prepared. It might take all night. The legend tells of a small child, orphaned after his parents' tragic death from disease. A local priest, feeling for the poor child, adopted him as his own. He raised the boy into adulthood up until his own death from old age. The man went on to become a doctor. But when the priest died, something snapped within the man. He began torturing his patients in secret, often killing the elderly or the sick to cover his abuse. With each day, his bloodlust grew and he slipped further and further into darkness. Just after murdering a young man, he got the shock of his life. Appearing over the dead body was the priest's spirit. Enraged that his adopted son turned to evil, the priest killed him and condemned his spirit to evil for the other world. He forced his ghost to retrieve the bones of all his victims and build a wagon out of them. He was left to travel the streets of Spain in the bones, forever being reminded of his sins. The legend continues, with people having reported hearing the ear-piercing screeching sound of the bones echoing off the alley walls. If you're unfortunate enough to stumble upon his ghost, you better run. You never know when he's looking for his next victim. As the legend of the Skinwalker has it, these beasts took on unassuming human form during the sunlight hours. It wasn't until the sun dipped below the horizon did it transform into the shape of an animal to feed upon weaker humans it found. But that's not all they were said to be able to do. Their long list of hybrid abilities included mind reading, compulsion, and superhuman strength, to name just a few. Uncovering the Skinwalker's personal identity, accompanied with their disdain for the sun's rays, left them vulnerable during the day. Evening the possible killing outcome, the opportunity would arise to defeat the Skinwalker while in their human form, If your attempt failed and you managed to escape before they could exact their revenge by ripping you to shreds, some legends mentioned a medicine man could create a sacred weapon which could then be used to give it a second shot. This is a story that will make you wary of driving alone at night. Late at night, a tired man was driving home from work when he saw a girl on the side of the road. As he got closer, she turned towards the headlights and waved him down. He pulled over and she asked him for a ride. Seeing as it was dark and there weren't any other cars on the road, the man agreed. As they drove for a few miles in silence, the man tried to strike up friendly conversation with the girl, but she remained fairly quiet. The road they were on followed the side of a mountain. As the man approached the sharpest curve, the girl shouted at him to be careful. Shocked by the outburst, he asked her what was wrong, to which she replied, "This curve is dangerous, and if he isn't careful, he'll die too." Her word choice puzzled him. As he rounded the corner, he began to ask her what she meant by, "He'll die too." He peered over his shoulder at the girl as he did so. The girl had her body turned towards him and matched his gaze. She said, "Last year, I ran my car through the guardrail and plummeted to my death. You better be more careful." Before he could let out a laugh at what he thought was a twisted joke, the girl vanished into thin air. Startled, he quickly pulled off to the side of the road and got out of his car. He yelled for the girl as he walked around his vehicle. On the side of the road, by the passenger side door, a cross marker protruded from the gravel, and tucked at its base was a picture of the girl. She wasn't joking. This might be one of the most famous urban legends in France, as it has inspired a few scenes in movies and plays. The urban legend is said to have originated in the 15th century when a barbershop owner and a pastry chef created an evil alliance. The barber had a cruel personality and loved to cause pain onto others. The baker was said to be greedy and wanted nothing more than to be a famous chef. The two owned shops next door to each other, and that's where they realized they could combine their sadistic interests. The barber would murder unsuspecting patrons whenever he got the chance, usually by using his straight-edge razor to slit their throats during a shave. To discreetly dispose of the body, they built a trapdoor between the two businesses, and he would send the corpse over to the pastry chef when he was done. The chef would then chop up the body, peel the meat off the bones, and bake it into his sickening recipes. Unfortunately for the people of the city, the new pastries were a hit. People could not get enough. So with an increase in demand for his pies, came an increase in demand for the victims. Eventually, their partnership came crumbling down when someone discovered the trapdoor and the countless leftover body parts of their victims. The gruesome legend ends with the two being tortured to death for the murders. After this legend began circulating, I wonder how long it took for people to trust barbers and bakers again. Some depictions of this undead eater describe it to be like a vampire, while others seem more like a zombie. To me, this urban legend creature is even more disturbing than a hybrid of the two. According to the stories, a person who has committed suicide or is the first to die out of a large group are said to awaken in their graves in search of people to consume. But not just anyone. They start with their family. Their hunger is so strong, this creature will stop at nothing to get a bite out of a relative. Unfortunately for anyone nearby, once they are finished devouring their siblings and parents, their hunger will still be unsatisfied. The undead then turn to causing chaos in the town. Some versions of this urban legend say that if their shadow touches you, your death will be imminent. And worse yet, if they get their hands on a church bell, anyone within earshot of the noise will drop to their death, and the undead will feed off their bodies and spirits. The urban legend does give some hope for those that are unlucky enough to cross paths with this creature. as there are a number of ways to defeat it. One way is by simply placing a coin in its mouth, which will instantly place the undead in a sleeping state. You are then able to bury its body back into its grave. Now, how you can possibly get a coin in its mouth without it taking a chunk out of you first, it doesn't say. I think I like bananas a little less after reading this creepy story. While on a walk one evening, a man hears the faint whimpers of a woman. As the sun had just dipped below the horizon and the sky was quickly turning dark, he wanted to find her to make sure she wasn't hurt. Following the directions of her soft cries, the man found himself in the middle of dense foliage. He called out for the woman, but instead of a reply, her cries silenced. Overcome with a sense of fear, the man backed out of the brush to return to the trail. Wanting to get home before it got too dark, he quickened his pace. The woman's cries resumed, but louder, once he began to leave the area. Feeling guilty he could not help the sad woman, the man turned around to yell for her one last time, something he would later regret doing. As his head looked over his shoulder, his eyes met a terrifying sight. The cries were indeed coming from a woman, but not an alive one. Emerging from under a banana tree, the woman's face was partially covered with long black strands, her face twisted in pure agony. Her arms, a lifeless baby appeared. His eyes were peeled back and his mouth was agape. As she continued to wail, the man wasted no time and began to run. He didn't stop until he was safe inside his home, and neither did her cries. Think werewolf, but a whole lot scarier. As the legends go, this creature can shapeshift from human to beast at will, and when they are in their wolf form, they keep control over their mind. So not only are they faster and stronger than you, they know how a human thinks and will use that against you. If you are ever to cross paths with one and it doesn't rip you to shreds on contact, be aware that if you injure it, it will transform back into the human form to reveal their real identity to you. But their defeat comes with a price that you will have to cover. For 101 days, you will be given the curse of the werewolf. Don't think you can impress your friends and scare your enemies with this new form either. For if you speak a word of the curse to another living soul, they will also be cursed. So keep quiet and allow the curse to run its course so that you can return back to the life you had before. Of course, now you'll know what's lurking in the shadows, and that might make sleeping in the dark a bit challenging. The Banshee is arguably the most iconic Irish urban legend, and it definitely earns that title with its insane amount of creepiness. Being such a famous mythological creature, there is obviously quite a few variations out there, but the story typically tells of a woman with a ghostly or corpse-like appearance. She usually dons an all-white gown that is tattered with age and has silver hair down to her waist, and to top off her menacing look, her face is distorted with a truly ugly, ear-shattering wail of distress. There are several proposed explanations for her spotting, but the common reason for her appearing in front of you is to foreshadow a death. Obviously, this is a creature you do not want knocking on your door in the middle of the night, but if you are unlucky enough to hear her cries, it is too late. A woman is said to have died of natural causes. A few days after her funeral, a gravedigger knew of the valuable ring she was laid to rest with and decides he wants it for himself, so he goes and unburies her. When he struggles to slide the ring off of her stiff finger, he resorts to using a knife to cut off her finger entirely. But when he slices her skin, the woman awakes with a screech of pain. The man is shocked to discover the woman was never truly dead, but was wrongly buried alive. This urban legend is undoubtedly inspired by the not so uncommon fear of being buried too soon and being forced to wait for death in a tiny box. Many historians debate on if this urban legend is based on true events, but regardless, The thought of being trapped 6 feet under is truly nightmare-inducing. I told you these were some of the 10 scariest stories we've covered so far, so don't blame me if you got nightmares tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. But if you have another country you'd like us to cover, either one we have covered already, but you think there's a lot more stories that need to be told, or a country we haven't covered yet. There's lots more, obviously. So I would love to hear it. Leave it down in the comments below, and it could be a next video. Until next time, keep it the radness, and I'll see you real soon. Bye! What's up, Rad family? Wow, that was a really enthusiastic intro.